Watching Buzz with Jess Lujan.
Good evening, Guam. I'm Jess Lujan. Welcome to this edition of The Buzz. Great show tonight, continuing our series of Real Faces, World War II, Guam World War II survivors. And this tonight, we have 2 of 6 of Lourdes Laguana Perez's kids who are here. Unfortunately, you're here, Rebecca, to celebrate your mom's first anniversary of her passing. She passed last July 1st, 2013. But she's got a great story. And so that being said, we're here to celebrate her life. And also, so again, this is Rebecca Laguana Perez Shields,
yeah.
And Dennis Perez, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Well, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
It's fantastic. Your mom, Lourdes Laguana Perez, she was one of the survivors featured in Real Faces, and hopefully will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully you'll still be here with a book
Hopefully,
outside.
yes,
Yeah.
I hope so.
I'll have you sign my book. Yeah, you guys sign my book. Your mom's story tells a lot of the people of Guam's story that were a part of World War II here in Guam. And Dennis, you're number two
Yes, sir.
of 6. You're number 4 of 6.
Yes.
You guys growing up, you must have heard a lot of stories, not only from your mom, but also from your dad. I mean, when I was reading your mom's story, your dad, now, if he, again, if this war was pretty new, I mean, going through it now, he would have been diagnosed as PTSD.
Yes.
Because he had nightmares of the
he
war.
did.
Tell us about their story.
I don't remember my mom telling us about the nightmare of my dad. My dad really didn't talk too much about the war. It was my mom who really talked about it. Maybe I was too young and maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but I heard more war stories from my mom, and she really went through a lot. She was only 11 years old when the war started. So she was 11 and then 15 years old when the Americans came to liberate, the Guamanians. But she remembered seeing so many horrifying things for a young child.
Sure.
But even though she was 11, she was also the oldest of the girls, so a lot was expected from her. She was expected to watch her mother, she was expected to learn how to cook, she was expected to take care of the younger ones.
And in your mom's testimony, and again, these are your mom's words, testimony taken, of course, at that time, ready to go to Washington to try to get war reparations, right? Yeah. She was telling us her testimony said that she was 11 and she was caring for her mom as well. Her mom had a breakdown. Her mom had a breakdown in the onslaught of the Japanese invasion.
Right.
Yeah.
Her mother had a breakdown because one of my mother's brothers died from I believe it was a tooth infection. He just came from the dentist, he had this tooth infection, but the Japanese still expected him to go out in the field and work. So for some reason he just never made it. And my grandmother had a breakdown because of that. And I think it was also because they were just surrounded by a lot of people dying, and they had to watch people die, and if they expressed any sign of emotion, they were also punished. So they really had to keep it together. And my grandmother, I guess, was just very delicate in that way, where, watching your child die is really difficult, and then having to go through the war and just watching your whole family suffer, it was really very difficult for her.
So Dennis, that's the second oldest in the family, as Mom told us, and we graduated the same year.
Right.
We almost went to the same school together. I'm sure you've heard the stories, and I'm sure even growing up when our parents would have heard. I mean, the closest thing to us that came close to what they experienced was, remember, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all that. And I remember my parents were very, very scared of that because they had just gone through that. So remember that time?
Yeah,
I mean, so how were mom and dad at the time when this was happening and this was all very fresh to them?
Well, one of the things that, I was fortunate enough to listen to a lot of stories from both grandparents, my grandfathers. And with my dad, like Becky said, he really didn't have, he had a lot of negative memories of the Japanese occupation at the time. Most of his fond memories were when Americans came to liberation. But I used to listen to my grandfathers and how it was very difficult, how they had to fend for the families back then. You know, with the occupation being the way it is and the Japanese being as brutal as they were. And, you know, for a family that large, and I mean, it was just, they weren't the only families, I'm sure. But it just to, you know, fend for your family like that, to find them a shelter, you know, to take care of their needs and everything, it was really difficult. And, you know, my mom, of course, being 11 years old, I mean, the difference between her and the elders, like my grandparents, were, you know, she was still experiencing it from a child's age, but both my grandfathers were. It's really difficult. They would talk about it. They would talk about it as matriarchs of their families.
Sure, and you know, and reading your mom's story, there's a lot of things that she said. There are a lot of things also that she got into that if there was a lot still added to it. I mean, she was raised by 3 aunts,
Yes.
by your dad's sisters. Which kind of told me that your grandmother really had a very very tough time, especially with the loss of her brothers, right?
Yes,
At that time. So this, from the onslaught, from the very beginning, your grandmother, I mean, very tough time with this.
Yeah, she must have gone through a lot, just watching her children suffer, watching her husband, my grandfather, risk his life, because my mother was saying that she would watch my grandfather plant, you know, corn and potatoes, and then he'd have to hide it from the Japanese, because the Japanese would punish them if they saw, you know, my grandfather taking food to his family. But my mom remembers they were walking to NCS or wherever they were going to some camp. And she said my grandfather would have his machete, and he'd be cutting down coconuts and cutting down whatever food he could find to feed his family. But they had to hide a lot of food from the Japanese, which is very hard.
Your mom was saying, it says, imagine this: the Japanese came and gave orders to her parents and said, look, you can't touch anything,
Right.
and this is their own farm.
Right, exactly,
Don't touch
exactly,
anything.
yeah.
This is, imagine
Yeah.
we were stealing from our own farm.
Yeah,
We were stealing from
we
our
were
own farm.
forbidden to eat our own food.
Yeah. And so again with that, and of course your grandfather was accused of harboring or feeding George Tweed,
George
at
Tweed,
the
yes.
time, and so as a result they really watched him to see where he went and things of that nature. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I tell you what, we're going to talk more about this. We got to pay some bills, but we'll be right
Okay.
back. Okay?
Okay, all right.
Be right back.